Hey Dad, how are you?
I am very good, my son. How are you all?
Very good.
Good.
Today,
Yes.
I'd like to talk about hiring,
Yes.
firing,
Yes.
managing,
Yes.
working with
Yes.
staff.
Yes.
So, to start with, how many staff do you think roughly you'd say you've worked with over your however many years of experience?
Oh my goodness.
No, not worked with maybe how many of you like had to hire, like properly hired to work full time with you?
Oh my goodness. Tens and tens and tens and tens, I would say.
So that's about 40.
Tens and tens and tens and tens. Could be. I would say more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you notice a difference, or not do you notice, sorry, can you think of a difference from when you first started, how you used to hire people compared to now? Can you think of
Definitely.
that?
Well, just remember a mistake is something that you know is a mistake that you continually do.
True.
So other than that, what are my learnings for
Yeah.
sure? And the reason I said tens and tens and tens and tens, and you correctly said that was 40, was because in my latter years, I've actually worked with other people that have had to recruit people on our behalf.
Got it.
So it
Yeah.
may be that I therefore didn't recruit directly per se, depending on the seniority or the importance of the
Yeah.
situation. I think one of the biggest learnings is the fact that specialists should be specialists. Now, was I ever or would I ever be a professional interviewer to recruit staff? No. We hire a business coach, or should I say we hire a tennis coach, we hire a golf coach, but do we ever recruit a recruitment company, if you like, to interview on our behalf? And a lot of people maybe listening to this would say, yes, I do. But the reality is a lot of small to medium enterprise businesses don't. We rely on ourselves doing the interview because it's our business and we want the right type of people. So, we know what we want. In reality, the learning that I gained over the years was I would make sure that if you came for an interview, this job would sound so amazing that you'd want it.
Yeah.
So instead of actually thinking, now hang on a minute, what am I actually looking for? And I think you've got to look within. Sometimes I think the goal is I need another salesperson, so find another salesperson. But in reality, what kind of salesperson? Are you looking to keep the same type of sales as you have at the moment? Are you looking to get bigger sales into your business? In an ideal world, people always say you should recruit people that are better than yourself. But a lot of people get very scared with that for fear of kind of feeling a little bit inferior to people that work for them or with them. I've always said, by the way, people work with me, not for me. But you would come in for a job and I didn't have the time or the patience to go through the process of interviewing 5, 6, 7. It may be that the first person you interview is absolutely the right person at that moment. But quite often, I would recruit, first impressions do count. So they would walk through the door and you make an immediate judgment on their appearance, just the way they walk, the way they dress, because whether people like it or not, and you always get people that say, I look as I look, and if you don't like it, it's your problem. The reality is it's not because people do make that judgment, whether correct or not. So first
I suppose it
impression,
shows their attitude. Like you said, it's those, I'm always thinking of what are those subtle things you can look for. So as you
yeah,
said, then it's like, actually, if they say, this is the way I dress, that kind of shows that they're not necessarily going to be willing to change. They're
yeah,
not going to be as
absolutely.
accommodating. So it might be they dress like that today, and on their first day, they say, "Oh, by the way I dressed in the interview, is it all right if I dress a bit different? That's not my style." And then again, you're learning they're open. So I'm always looking for those small, not obvious behaviors and what you can learn from that. And that sounds like what you're saying about
Sure.
you can't not judge the way someone's
Well, you make the
dressing
initial judgment.
based on what you're thinking or
Well,
what
there's
you're
never a
looking for.
second chance to make a first impression.
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So the first impression, if they haven't spoken, is the way they've opened the door, the way they walk towards you, their dress sense, et cetera, et cetera. So, for example, you'd never be able to work for me with your dress sense, right?
Too stylish.
Perhaps that was a good answer, but you understand, yeah? So dress sense is very, very important. If you're interviewing someone for a senior management position, you you'd expect them in a certain attire, which I wouldn't kind of comment on that now. It depends on the
Yeah.
industry, etc. So for me, I would very much advise anybody to think about your company image. This is something I didn't do. That's the point. That's the learning. Think about your company image. Think about where your company's going. Are you looking for a short term fix? In other words, you're very busy, so you need a salesperson. So are you looking for the now, or are you looking for someone that could fit the now that would evolve and develop into the future? Where's your company going? This is massive learnings from me because I definitely recruited for the now. I need a
And
gone. Yeah.
oh yeah, that's something I wanted to speak to you about. And
Yeah.
you said it there of, and this is something I've learned from watching other people. And I feel like so many people do that because you normally you recruit because you've got, when I say a problem, it might be a
You're
positive
right.
problem, a problem
Challenges
of
to
growth.
overcome.
So whatever that challenge is right there, you're going to recruit for that challenge. And
Yes.
we've spoken about this on many episodes before, and I hope this comes across to listeners of something Dad's really taught me is always thinking long term. So if you're hiring someone now for this specific challenge,
Yes.
what traits are they going to have that's going to help where I want to go in the long term?
Yes, for
So if
sure.
I know in the long term, here's where we want to be, I know, as you said there, those, what image do they have? What skill are they coachable? Are they going to be looking for, as Pickeroons looks for new ways of creating content? Are they going to be looking at new ways of creating
Yeah.
content? I think that's a really interesting thing that I feel like most people don't do, mostly because I've been hired before for a problem that's right now.
Yeah.
And within 2 months, when that's not a problem anymore, it's like, oh, we're not quite sure now where you're going. So when I want to go in this direction, the company have said, well, that's not where we wanted you to go. It's like, well, when you first hired me, that links with what you hired me for.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting thing. And I'm interested that you think that as well.
Yeah, but as you asked the question brilliantly, it's what's the learning? So, you would have come in, for example, you would have come into I had a carpet and flooring retail shop. So you would have come into the shop
I
and,
did work for you. I didn't have to do an interview.
well, you didn't really work for me because people that worked for me actually got paid and they actually
I
worked
got
for
paid.
me.
I got paid with those sandwiches and things we
You
used to get at
did.
lunch.
You did. Did you actually work
Yeah,
for
yeah.
me?
I used to carry the carpets, sometimes have a little mid-afternoon nap, which was on company time.
That's true, actually. I never realized mid-afternoon started
That
in the morning,
that was
but
yeah,
that's good. That's
in the
good.
lockup, yeah.
But no, you're right. It's you would come in for an interview, for example, straight away I'd look at you and think, oh, this is a nice, presentable guy. First thing is, good morning or good afternoon. And again, the way you are, genuinely, your reaction would be, hi, good morning. Oh, that's a nice first impression, nice attitude. Then I would talk about, what have you been doing? But actually, I'm old school and I passionately believe people buy people. So really what I'm doing is getting a feel of the attitude of this person. Are they nice? That is not enough. And that was my learning. Are they nice is great. So they come into the company because they're nice, and then you find out actually they're not that good.
Yeah.
And that's, if you like, something to watch out for. So as we said earlier, what are you looking for? And is it for a now or is it to evolve? Where are you in your business? Are you an expanding company? Are you someone of latter years that's actually just looking to kind of cope with what you're doing? Because again, it's better to develop somebody and then they can understand the way of the company, et cetera, and even improve things than just take somebody on and hope that everything will be magically cured. That's another
That
thing.
goes back to our thing of looking at the problem now, not
Yeah.
looking, you're hoping to cure the problem now instead of have someone that's going to help ride the seas with you and solve the problem now and the next problem and the problems you don't even
Yeah,
know are
I
going to be
agree. I
problems.
agree. And therefore, the content of the interview is critical. So I think to finish that first question, which was awesome, I used small businesses don't have the patience. So the first person that comes in that seems nice, that chats away, and you think, yeah, I think you could do a good job, we recruit. And then we find out afterwards. That would change with me now. And the people I teach how to recruit, that's not what I teach them now.
And that's great. And something you said there, which is a natural, nice progression of the content of the interview.
Yes.
And this was, look, our style is always, let's have a bit of a chat, but what actionable things can I take away from this? And
Yes.
hopefully then our listeners.
Yes.
So when you said content of the interview, let's go into that a bit more. What would be your first question you would ask someone? Or what would be
I
the
think
theme of your questions in general? You can choose which of those 2 to
yes.
answer.
I think I would challenge, not I think actually, I you know, a lot of us like to come across as nice people. So we have this position that needs filling, and we want to appeal to the person in front of us to want to take the job. So we're nice. That doesn't mean show how horrible you are and be real, but in a way it might do. If you have a style, it may not be a good style of management because management and leadership are a skill in itself, which we've talked about and we'll talk more about another day. I would challenge and be a bit more provoking in the interview. I would now create a scenario and pretty much ask you, in this scenario, how would you handle it? And I wouldn't test them to find them out, if you like, but I don't know that they're good enough when I take them on. Normally it's like, no, I think I've got the right person. So if you can imagine, we were interviewing for salespeople and I'd go home to mum and she, how'd you get on? I said, yep, I think I've taken on the right person. Seemed very nice, has been in sales for 20 years, sold this, that, or other. So I think, they'll be good. But what I didn't do was challenge them enough. Almost, if you like, think that, well, if they don't like what I'm doing here, then they're not going to be good enough for me. If they're frightened of what I'm doing, they're not going to be good enough. And I repeat, I'm not setting them up to fail in that,
Yeah.
but I would put a scenario, for example, we've done a job for a client. They're very happy with the job. They've paid. But a month later, they contact us and say, oh, actually, there's some damage on a wall that wasn't there when we first entered the property, but this would be 1 month later. How would you handle that scenario?
That's a really good question, yeah.
So,
So it's almost like creating a scenario like you say, it's not challenging them in a nasty way, but it's saying, "What would you do?"
yes,
Yeah, nice.
therefore, because I'm not saying we would do damage anywhere, but that could be a scenario when you are entering someone's house that it looked like this before, and apparently 1 month later, they find something and accuse you of it.
Yeah.
But that has happened in my 32-year flooring career. So how would you deal with it? And again, I'm not expecting them to have the perfect answer. I may be more experienced than them. But if they're saying, for example, well, I would just say to them, "I'm sorry, we can't help you. It was 1 month later, and you should have contacted us immediately after the job was done." I would be thinking, "Well, that's not the right immediate reaction."
Like we said, you're looking for those maybe smaller subconscious what is the soft skills?
Well, it's soft skills, and also, does it match our values? But even in that scenario, using that exact scenario, just because that first answer was, well, I'd say to them, I'm very sorry, but it's a month after. It can't be guaranteed that it's us. So I'm sorry, we can't do anything about it. That doesn't mean it's over. That just means that was their best response. So even at that stage, I can now find out if they're argumentative because I could then say something to them like, oh, well, actually, there is a potential that it might have been us or not. So in this scenario, we would personally go and visit them and have a conversation and maybe speak to the fitters. Now, if they turn around and said, well, why should you do that? It's a month later, customers, that's the customer's problem.
Yeah.
Already you're thinking, okay, that's not the right attitude for our
I had it
company.
with one guy, and I remember, and he'd already got on my nerves as soon as we started the interview because he was, like, burping a bit, but then he was kind of like, or yawning, but he wasn't saying and again, it's a small thing.
Yeah.
He wasn't going, "Oh, sorry." And it wasn't the fact he did it, it was the fact he didn't say, "Oh, sorry." I thought if I put him in front of a client, because you know me, I'm
Yes.
chilled with that type of stuff, but I'm
Yes.
like, if I put him in front of a client, he's yawning, and he doesn't say, "Oh, sorry, like, I'm really tired because I was up editing late last night."
Yeah.
So I thought if he's gonna do that to me and then there was
Yes.
something I said about, like, one of the businesses that we're looking at, and his first reaction was he kinda turned his nose up a bit and said, like he just went straight to the negative side of that industry. And I was just a bit like, "Okay," so his first thing to look at was the negative, not to be open and listen, and then I'd respected the fact that he wanted to speak about the negative side,
Yeah.
but the fact that was his first reaction, I was like, "Okay, so his first thing isn't to be open and then question, it's to kind of go back up. And I was like, okay, that's a small thing, but you can't not when you're looking for those things. Because I'm like you, and I really like that advice. And maybe there is somewhere you've taught me this, or I've learned from watching your dealings with many people.
Right.
Of I'm hiring for when those problems happen. Is that someone we can run through the fire with? And
Yes.
because it's very easy to go, here's great things I've done, here's great achievements, here's that. But how do you know that if when something goes wrong, they don't? I don't. You said be argumentative or be
Absolutely.
rude.
You find, fight or flight, as you
Yeah,
know, and you've got to find characters. I mean, there's a few things really that you need to consider when you're recruiting. Number one, what are your values as a person, as a company? We know the customer's not always correct, but we have to veer onto the client side, in my opinion. And there are times when we've handed back some money to a client when we knew it wasn't us. We
yeah,
knew it. But the way we reacted to their complaint or concern, they were so impressed with that not only did they continue to use us for years to come, but they recommended us happily. I mean, you think in life, okay, when you have a complaint about a supplier, most people, and I'm sure our listeners would resonate with this, if it's your first ever complaint with a supplier, you're not really sure on their reaction. So you're almost kind of contacting them. I mean, some people, as we know in our lives, are natural complainers.
yeah,
But generally, good people, you're phoning somebody and you're almost apologizing. There's a little bit of a
yeah,
complaint, but you're doing that preempting their potentially negative reaction. So we would have it, for example, in our flooring company, guys, you've got to be different in your business. So we would always phone every single client. I know we're completely away from interview subject here, but we would always phone every single client 1 month after the job was done, even if they were happy at the time. And we used to make it, it was a courtesy call, but we figured that was an investment in our future referral path. So we would phone every single client saying, it's a month later, we know you were happy, but is there anything that you've seen that you're not sure about? And occasionally someone would, and we trained our team to listen to what's not said, just even the tone. And I remember someone kind of saying, no, no, we're fine, thank you. And I said, that doesn't sound like you're totally happy.
yeah,
And they said, well, there's a little indentation. So there's something called a door bar, which is between two rooms, like a brass kind of strip. And she said, well, there's a little indentation in the door bar, but that might have been us. It's not a problem. And I said, oh, no, no, we'll send one of the guys
yeah.
back and replace that. And she said, no, 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 don't be silly. I said, it'll be our pleasure.
But that goes back to the knowing who you are and what you stand for, and what you stood for was always giving the customer unbelievable satisfaction,
Yeah.
and that you weren't just doing one job, but you'd be doing future jobs, and that every customer is someone who'll bring you other customers. So
And
that
even
goes
if they
back to
didn't,
your way of doing business.
it is, but even if they didn't, son, even if they didn't, it was our values, our conscience. I can't control whether they referred us again or not.
But that's what I mean, that's your values. So
Yeah,
your values were, because I've taken this from you and done it with Pickeroons. I mean, it's a story for another day, but we had one where we created a logo for a company in Florida.
yeah,
And the logo, we went through this whole process. We go through this design. What do you like? We made it, built it from scratch. And like a month later, it turned out there was another very similar company in Florida with a similar logo. So there was no way we'd have ever known,
yeah,
because one, we don't live in Florida, and we were brought as someone from outside of there
yeah,
to analyze the market. We went through this whole process. Their logo was rubbish and ours was great, even though it was similar.
yeah,
But it was just a like, look, and I had to call them and I said, look, I really need you to know we did, like, there's no part of us that went through this thing. And I remember I was really nervous. Maybe I probably told you about it at the
you did. I
time.
remember it.
And I said, look, we'll get it right. We'll redo it. Even though we'd done the job,
Yeah,
it was like, we'll redo it. Like, we're going to get this done, because learning from you, it was more important to me to get that done. And linking back to what we've been speaking about with the staff, and this isn't a full-time staff, but where I had one of the freelancers for Pickeroons, because his values align with mine. So
yes,
he wanted to do great work.
yes,
He wanted the client to always love what they receive
yeah,
and to want to work with us more in the future or refer
yeah,
us. He understood the problem. He went, nope, let's do it. Let's get it done.
yeah,
So it was, if I'd have had the client, yes, I sorted the client part, but if that staff member of mine, and not full-time staff, I think I still speak about staff as my
yeah,
freelancers, If he didn't have those values, which is why I originally worked with him, that could have been a big problem if they'd have turned around to me and gone, "Yeah, fine, get it done. We appreciate you." And he said, "Well, I'm not doing any more." Now I've got to pay all that money from Pickeroons to him. And then again, I may be thinking too much of the link here, but because he helped me there, I've now brought him in for even more work in the future because I know he's
Absolutely.
accountable and he's going to help me out. Not accountable, sorry, dependable.
Yes.
And it's just funny how what I'm really getting from this about you're saying is making sure that that staff you hire, the team, are always based around those values and that the
Very
questions you
important.
ask are going to make sure that you can check off, do they tick that list? Do they have
Yeah.
those
Well, we
values?
tend to, depending on what size business you are, the larger the business, you can recruit people you don't particularly take to. You're not the same personality, but that's purely and simply they may not be working with you
Yeah.
directly, or you've agreed. How do you, I mean, one of the great questions is, how do you receive feedback? As
Mhm.
in, are you positive about receiving feedback? Because it's another word for criticism. Are you negative
But
about
in an interview, I'm
feedback?
going to say I'm positive. So now what would you say?
I would turn around and say, "Give me the worst feedback you've ever had, and how did you react to it?" Whereas I would not have said that in my early days.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
would have kind of said, "Oh, good." So
Yeah.
it's almost like,
Because to me, that's like, and I always find that a lot of interview questions are too easy. It's like, what books do you like? It- like, tell me about a great, like, what's that one? It's like, what's your worst personality trait? And people are like, I try too hard. I care too much.
yeah,
Like, it's easy to flip that and make it into a positive
you're
about
being
yourself.
interviewed to get the job. Okay. So you are going to act accordingly to get the job.
Yeah.
The difference is if you are the interviewer, you need to assume that they are acting to get the job. So I want to, if you've got high standards, I want to create a scenario that would be a normal scenario. How would you react to that? Okay, I would also say something like, okay, I'm not happy with something that you've done, and I approach you, and this would be my normal approach. How would you receive that approach? Now, as you say, they can turn around and say, "Oh, no, I'd receive it very
But
positively."
no, but I like the one that you said before about like the role playing almost.
Yep.
And maybe that's it. It's actually getting them to role play, like, here's the situation. I've always thought it with design because creative people turn up and go, here's my portfolio, here's the work I've made. And you look at it and go, that's great. But when I used to work in agencies, there's multiple people working on that.
Yes.
So for all I know, all they did was just move some fonts around. I don't know if they were the one that actually came up with the concept, came up
Yeah.
with the thinking. So for designers, I would always go, right, here's a brief. You've got an hour to make something. I'm not expecting you to make a perfect piece. I know you've got an hour. I just want to see how your brain works
Great.
with this brief.
Great. That, I mean, I think that's fantastic because if that is the typical work they're doing, then if they can do this in 1 hour, okay, then what could they do with a better remit? Likewise, if you then tested them further and said, "Okay, I really like that." Now, if I were to give you some feedback on that and I said A, B, C, D, and E, how would you take that feedback?
I'd almost say, what would you do next? Because I think, again, how do you take that feedback? I take it well.
Fantastic. So, do you appreciate direct talking? Because I'm quite a direct talker. Do you appreciate we sit aside? What's the type of way you'd
You
appreciate
said you're a
feedback?
direct talker, so I appreciate direct talking because I want to impress
Great.
you.
Now, what I've done there though, even if you said what you think I need to hear, the fact is you're where I need you to be. Now, you either lied or you didn't. But at least I can then say, okay, they created that design within the hour. They've said they appreciate straight feedback, which I am. I like them. I appreciated the way they were. Other things we need to include in the interview would be things like, why did you come to this company? Are you working at the moment? Obviously. If not, why not? And if you are, why are you looking? Where do you see yourself in a few years' time?
Yeah.
These are important questions. And also, it's very important for the interviewer to talk about the future.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
because this is where we want to take our company. We are looking for the right type of person, etc. And again, they could say, "Oh, yes, that's me." But remember, you've got time to fire them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
You're
saw
only
something
looking to
once and
hire
it
them.
said, it was like a joke, it was like a meme or something, and it said, "Why do you want this job?" And it just said, "Because I need the money." It's
Yeah,
it's like, why do you really want it? And it's like you said, it's finding people that have that passion, have that link, and really making sure that you're filtering them with the right questions.
Yeah, I think I'd be more thought-provoking, more challenging, test them more, and I would now definitely be more convinced that I've got the right person. And also, with my type of advancement, if you like, if I can push you a little bit and you come through that, then I know in that scenario, you're potentially the right person. But I would go out thinking, "Oh, they were nice, and, that's really great. It feels good." There's a story I could tell you about the guy that we used to buy our underlay from.
Oh, yeah, I think
Yeah?
you mentioned this before, yeah.
Oh, I think it's such a funny story. So, as I've said to our listeners, I used to be in the carpet and flooring business for 32 years, and one of the things that our company regularly bought, I mean, literally twice a week delivery, would be underlay, which goes underneath carpets. That is literally like butter for bread, okay? So it's a regular thing. And we used to use a very, very small local supplier actually, because we really liked them. I mean, people buy from people. We really liked them. They were very competitive. And we literally would phone them up every week and we'd say, we want 50 rolls of underlay this week, or we want 80 rolls of underlay this week. That would be the type of thing every single week, literally a phone call. And within 2 days, they'd be delivering it, etc. Lovely. On the very rare occasion, and I'm a very loyal buyer, so we would have reps, that would say to me, "Oh, we could be a little percentage cheaper than them." And I said, "No, I'm really not interested." But occasionally there would be an amazing deal as a one-off, literally.
Yeah,
So we would literally order 50, 60, 70, 80 rolls, whatever it was, 80 rolls of underlay from another supplier for that week. I would say within 24 hours of when we'd normally place our order, if not sooner, this gentleman, who will remain unnamed, would phone me up and say, "Hi, Phil, I haven't received an underlay order from you this week." And I said, "No, we had a most amazing deal as a one-off, but don't worry, we're with you all the time. It's just 1 week." But I was always impressed with this guy. Pleasant guy. And I thought, wow, he's really on top of the business, that he would phone us up and say, "Hi, haven't received your orders. Everything okay?" And I liked that. I
yeah.
didn't take that wrong at all. So this happened maybe once a year over a period of many years. Anyway, I heard that he wasn't happy in his job later, this is many years later, and we were looking to recruit another salesperson into our team. And I invited him into the office, and I knew him. And really, the interview was about 5 minutes. It was kind of, okay, look, are you happy to start with us, etc. We agreed terms, and he started for us. I would go as far as saying day two, if not day one. I'd invited him to visit the local estate agents in our town, because estate agents are always good referrers and they put us in front of landlords and quite often can connect. Ultimately, this guy came back. I said, "How did it go?" He said, "Yeah, I went into 5 of them." He said, "They all have carpet people they recommend." And straight away I thought, well, I know that.
Yeah.
I'm sure of that. So I said, "Okay, so did you question them?" He said, "Well, no, they're all very nice, but they're all happy with their existing suppliers." And straight away I was thinking, well, how much do they order from their suppliers? Um, are there products that they can't be supplied? Could we be a second supplier that if they can't do? So that it was just, he gave up so quickly. So in challenging him, I thought, oh, that was, he wasn't as good as I initially thought. It was within a week I found out that I was so impressed with him that he phoned us every week, because what I didn't know was we were his only customer. Literally, we were his only customer. So he was eating his bread and butter
Yeah, yeah.
based on our 50, 60, 40 rolls of underlay. So if we didn't phone him, he was like, "Oh my goodness, what am I eating this week?" And there was me thinking, that's really
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
impressive. Whereas he was actually useless. And it
That's
was
so funny.
because I made an assumption when I can't even call it an interview. I made the assumption that I already wanted him. I never challenged him.
Yeah, and I think I like that word of challenge, because I've heard some really good and really horrible stories. I want to share some with you and get your thoughts of where people challenge.
Yeah,
So I've got one friend who, it was a sales job, and I understand the theory of, if you're dealing with clients that might give you 10, 20 million, you need to be able to handle some serious pressure.
of course.
And it was in the middle of the interview. I think they asked him to stand up, walk into the corner, look at the wall, and sing to them. In the middle of the interview, they said, "Get up and go and sing," because they wanted to see how he handled that awful pressure.
Yeah.
What do you think about that as a challenge?
Okay. Personally, I don't like it,
No, I don't
but
either. I
I
think it's
would.
too much. But I get it. I don't like
Well,
it, but I get it.
it's an interesting one. I mean, we've got to remember interviews are both ways. And what I mean by both ways, I'm interviewing you because I need someone to do the job,
Yeah.
but I should also be considerate of you interviewing me to see if you want the job. Okay. As I've always said to you, go for every interview, get offered the jobs and turn them
Yeah.
down. Don't ever miss out on the job because of perception and you don't
Yeah.
even go to the interview.
But some of the
Okay.
jobs end up getting, where I remember when I was interviewing for loads of jobs, and the one that ended up getting was the one, and having was the one that I wanted the least beforehand,
Yep.
based on my assumption of what that company was and what I'd be doing.
Yes, exactly. It's
It's
interesting.
so
So
funny how that
go for the
works.
interviews. You'll learn.
You become good at interviewing.
Yeah, you'll get more experience. But I think with that scenario of someone being asked to stand up, go in a corner, face the wall, sing, whatever, I feel that my reaction would be to literally ask them, could I please ask you, why do you want me to do that? Because also, interviews are games.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at this another way around. Two ways, okay? They say, please stand up, go into the corner and sing. So I stand up, go into the corner and sing.
Now they know you
Does
can be
that
pushed over.
right, does that show
But
strength?
this might be their challenge.
It could be, you see, that's
And
so
it's brutal, but that might be their
well, be
challenge of,
you, because then it might not be the job for you.
yeah.
Because for me, respectfully, always with manners, I would say, could I please ask you, why do you want me to do that? And actually, what I'm then doing is taking control of the questions because they've got to now answer. They might say, well, we want to see how you react in that type of situation. So I could turn around and say, okay, well, I've just shown you how I
Yeah,
reacted.
yeah.
How did that work?
We heard another one is, I think it's Google, and they quickly say, right, give us 10 uses for a kettle,
Okay.
because they want to see how you can think quickly on your feet creatively.
But I think that's a great
It's
question
really good.
if that's relevant to the job and the role you're
Yeah.
going for. Okay, so if you're a creative supposed to be coming up with ideas, I think it's a fantastic question because that would be within your job remit.
Well,
Someone
that's
w
why the singing one, I kind of get it. Even though I don't feel comfortable with it, I do get it, because as you said, they might not have even wanted you to sing. Their outcome might have been, I want to see what happens when we have an awful client say something. Can they take control of the situation? It's that like good cop, bad cop.
be yourself
And
because
there's,
yeah,
sorry.
so no, be yourself because I would not literally just stand up, go into a corner and sing. That might be the moment where I'd be thinking to myself, I've lost this order, haven't I? Because a client says, have you ever heard me talk about the one that, who controls the answer? Have you ever
Yeah.
heard me do this one?
Yeah.
So if I said to you, ask me any question you like, any single question, okay? Go for it.
What song would you sing if you had to go stand in the corner?
Okay, I like that. Why did you ask that question as it
Because we were
happens?
just talking about the songs that you might sing.
Oh, that's interesting. But I've just taken over control by saying to you, why did you ask that question?
Yeah.
You're now answering my questions. So I've turned the tables. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's very important. Be yourself, be respectful. And if the people you're talking to aren't respectful in themselves, it's not a good fit.
But also, that might be the good fit, because that might be the industry. So you might know that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why your advice there of be yourself is so useful, because I find that most people, myself included, will answer the things that I think you want to hear. And I remember I had one interview at a company, and I knew all the campaigns they'd done. You know, the way that I prepare for I knew
Yes.
everything. And in the interview, they said to me, "What was the last book you read?" And I remember being so taken back, because I
You
hadn't
weren't
prepared for
expecting the
that.
question.
I'd had prepared for their campaigns, the insights, how they worked.
Yeah.
And I remember just going like through my brain, oh my God, what book have I read that was like a business book? What book have I read that was a good, like, that makes me sound smart? And it wasn't. It was like the Motley Crue autobiography.
Yeah.
And it was like, the Motley Crue autobiography. And I remember them being a bit like, oh, I ended up getting the job though. So it was obviously
Yeah.
okay. But I remember that I was so set, especially when you're more junior, I think, you're so set on what's the best answer, instead of what I say to people now, friends or family or anyone, if they've got an interview, is when you walk in that room, assume they've made the decision based on your CV of if they want you or not. So all you need to do is just I don't say the words be yourself, but like
Yeah.
do what you've answer in the normal way, because all they're doing now is just checking out small parts of your personality that if you try and answer the things that you think will convince them, assume they've already made their decision.
Well, you have to be yourself as well, and not to repeat the same reason. You've often heard me say you can't be experienced without
Yeah.
experiences. The challenge with that is if throughout your career, not you, but anybody, for whatever reason, happens to have numerous interviews over their years at different companies, progression, different reasons, then obviously by default, they're becoming more experienced at being interviewed. The challenge with that is they could then almost become a bit too smooth at being interviewed, but it doesn't mean they're going to be good at the job. So the real key to a successful interview, in my opinion, isn't about the person that's being interviewed. It's about the person that's doing the interview.
Yeah.
We must assume it's no different from sales. You know the audience. We must assume they're going to answer what we want to hear. Create a real scenario, put them in that situation, and test their reactions. And then you're seeing the type of person, their ambition, and the other practical ideas. Where would you like to be? Why here? Why have you come for this? You'll judge it on their
Yeah.
answers.
I think I'm a big fan as well of, and I know I've mentioned a few challenges, but those subconscious challenges, because I just don't. I think there's some people who are brilliant, brilliant, but they let their nerves of you don't know their personal situation. They might be liking the job they're in, but they're trying to leave it. They'll be relaxed. They might have lost the job because of the company made everyone redundant. They might have no money. So this means life and death for them. And in that sense, I understand that nerves could take over
Definitely.
and make you different. And that's why I think I'm keen on what I'd call like little tests that I don't think nerves or anything would change. There's one that I heard about, and I think you'll really like this. I don't know which company it was, but they would, in the middle of the interview, they'd say to you, "Oh, do you want a drink or anything?" And they take you to the kitchen with them to make your drink. You'd have your cup of tea or whatever.
Right.
You go back to the interview room, you sit down, have the interview, all of that. At the end of the interview, they say, "Yeah, thank you very much." And then they'd leave. So, right, off you go. What they then do is, you've been to the kitchen. Are you going to take your cup of tea back,
Yes. Interesting.
or are you going to leave it? Because
Yeah.
if you take that back,
Yeah.
that shows you're not gonna just expect someone else to do things for you.
Yes. I
If
like
you
that.
leave it, that means you just think someone else will pick up after you, and I remember when I heard that, I don't remember which company. I wanna say Heineken, but I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
I
that.
thought
I
it was
think that's,
brilliant.
yeah, I think, but
Doesn't matter
again,
how someone's feeling, that is values. That's
well,
a
it's
way to test the
morals on that
value,
one.
morals.
But also, you see, you talk about positions. For example, this is a great message. If I'm recruiting for sales, whoever gets the job, I want them to think that was a tough interview.
Yeah,
That was a tough job to get. Why? Because that's what the sales environment is. If I'm looking for somebody to do my administration, okay, then I'm not looking for, if you like, a sales closer.
yeah,
I'm looking for somebody with a different type of brain. I'm looking for somebody, if you like, that literally would pick up that cup of tea that you just
yeah.
mentioned, take it back in there, wash it, and put it in the dishwasher, whatever. But because that's their mindset. So I think it would be a very different provocation and thought process dependent upon what position you're hiring for.
Very good. So now we've spoken about the hiring part of things, I wanna talk about the firing.
Yep.
So I've got here a statistic that says 74% of employers say they've hired the wrong person for a position. I'm surprised about that. I feel like that should almost be more.
Yep.
So, what's your process you go through to go from I think I've made the wrong hire here to actually firing them?
Yeah. Well, first of all, remember, we didn't hire the wrong people. We hired the right people in our mind. Okay. But I would say that a good technique to do is in our flooring company, we had become experienced that we had our systems. We knew how we worked. So someone would contact us, we fill in an inquiry sheet. We then booked in an appointment, etc., etc. We had our kind of step-by-step guide. Okay. So the first thing we ever said to anybody when they came on board is, look, we don't think for a minute we're perfect, but we are very, very happy with our current processes, our current systems, but we ask you to just be considerate of that. Don't change anything. Work with us for 3 or 4 months, and we will be talking to you about, are there improvements that we could make? So we were very, very, if you like, aware of saying to them, just follow what we do, but observe it and be aware that we're happy to talk to you about improvements once you've experienced it. But I think the goal when you recruit is to support and encourage and train people to be good enough. Don't wait for them to be not good enough. So, relating to something we've spoken about earlier, which is coachable, feedback is given in the right way and received in the right way is one of the most important parts of good relationships, any relationships in work, outside work, feedback, communication. So imagine, please, we took somebody on and we explained to them that, look, this is our current turnover and our profit, and take you on as an extra salesperson, which we need because we're getting a lot more inquiries nowadays. Then turnover and profit needs to go up, both of them, by this and by this. And they would be very clear that if that doesn't happen, with no blame to them or us yet, but if that doesn't happen, then the relationship at this moment is not successful. So it's setting clear guidelines on what's expected because, you know, someone, someone can't be not good enough based on an opinion. You've heard one of the Bergisms, a fact starts a conversation, an opinion starts an
Yeah.
argument. So someone can't be good enough on an opinion. They can be not good enough based on a fact. And that fact has to be clear that, you know, we need to increase turnover and therefore profit by this kind of figure. If not, we need to make that happen or it's not going to work. So there's clear requirements at the beginning
Yeah.
that are either met or not met.
When you say requirements, do you think of these as like targets or objectives, maybe?
I think it could be any of the words,
Yeah.
objective targets, requirements. I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm paying you, say, it doesn't matter, 50,000, 500,000. If I'm paying you a salary of X, one thing's for sure, your sales has to generate
Yeah, you need a return
more
on investment.
profit than X. Because if your sales are just literally covering the profit that I'm paying you, then what's the point? I've just taken on another person to make no more money and have more management aggravation and concerns. So actually, the fact that I'm paying you X, there is, even if it's unsaid, there is a requirement that you've got to, if you like, increase sales by X plus 5% or 10%. If I'm not making money out of you as an owner, why have I got you? If it's at administration, then again, this is the requirement per month, and this needs to be done, and that must be done. And this must all be in writing and very
Yeah.
clear. So ultimately, when you take somebody on, it should be absolute black and white fact of what the expectation is. But also, what should be included is what's a missing skill set, where can we support you, what areas would you like more help with? And really, these reviews, if you like, you know, should not be, and too many small companies do it like this. It's almost like I happen to be speaking to you 3 weeks into the job, and I say, "So you enjoying it?" And your answer would generally be,
Yeah.
"Absolutely great. Any challenges so far? No, all fine." And that apparently is a management meeting.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with small companies who are busy, they don't create time to actually improve or remove. So I would say that you want, whether it's a weekly or a 2 weekly, just a time put aside and even an agenda. So it could be, okay, let's look at the sales. You know, if it is sales, let's look at the sales in the first 2 weeks. Let's look at the inquiries.
Yeah.
Let's look at conversion. Let's look at, you know, what,
Tasks, 'cause it's not all
yeah, what
sales.
happened. You know, this is the percentage of conversion. What happened with that at the end of the month? Great. This is the turnover. This is the profit. Didn't quite equal the monthly target, but it's only the first month. So, what skill set are we missing? What can we help with? Or what do we need to do to make it back up? And at the end of the day, it's having the foresight to say, actually, this person's a lovely person, but we can't get them to the standard we want. Or it's my coaching. So it's me or them, whichever way. If you have taken the wrong person on and you've, after the support and help, you really know this is not the right person for whatever reason, then remove them. Because one of my Bergisms is simply, it's not a problem if you've got a bad member of staff, but it's only a problem if you keep them. You
Very
know,
good, yeah.
yeah, well, some people say, "Oh, it would be quite a problem if I got rid of them." And I say, "Well, isn't it a problem if you keep them?"
So especially if you've got a team, because what's it like one bad apple, what's the saying?
It I'm not sure of
I don't
that
know what it is,
one.
but there's one, it's like one bad apple can, like, ruin the whole pack
Well,
or
number one,
something.
it sets a precedent. So if this person's not doing it, so can the rest, et cetera. It
Yeah.
happens in life in
Culture as well. It brings
correct,
culture down.
correct. And at the end of the day, you've got to look at yourself as a manager, as a leader, and say, am I giving this person all the tools they need? I work, as you know, with many business owners, helping them develop their teams, train their teams, motivate their teams. And quite often the business owner makes the mistake of, well, they should be motivated. I pay them enough. But, when people receive more money and they get used to it, all of a sudden, it's not more money, it's
Yeah.
their norm. So, how are we supporting, training, and developing our teams? Or are we waiting for them to be good enough instead of finding out they're not? And once you are convinced that it might be a really lovely person, so that tugs on the emotions, but once you're convinced that this person isn't what they said or what you need them to be, it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. There's a moment when it's a tough moment and you've got to speak with them honestly. So I would do something like this. James, do you remember when we first started, and we have it on an email, that we had to increase our sales by this percentage each month? You're naturally going to say, yes, I do. Well, we've met each month, and each month I've always said, is there anything more I could do to help you? And that's a big, big thing for a manager to say. Is there anything more I can help you with? Because if you don't use that line with your teams or your staff, ladies and gentlemen, then you're not getting them to take ownership. So if I said, is there anything more I could be doing? Could I improve to help you? And they say, no, no, you're great. Then what they're really saying is, it's me then. It's me. And providing it said it's a fact, this is what we said we'd do. This was the first month. We had a conversation. Was there anything more I could do? And you said no. Second month, sales are down again. Again, we had a conversation. We discussed everything. I've asked, is there anything more I could do? Again, you said no. So you must appreciate for 2 months running, we haven't hit targets. Yep. Okay. And this is the question. So what should we do to get back on track? Or where do we go from here? So I'm a great one for getting the other person to take ownership of the answer. So what do we do to get back on track? Or where do we go from here? So they can turn around and say, well, I don't know, maybe this isn't working out.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted us to get to, is you've said to me before, you've never fired anyone.
Yeah, correct. I've never ever fired. I mean, I've had hundreds of staff in my years. I've never ever fired anybody, but I've parted company with many people where we've both agreed it's not working. It doesn't matter who's to blame. I mean, if they want to blame me and they think it's unfair, there's nothing I can do about that. But it is based on a fact, not an opinion. So actually, in the moment, they're annoyed with me, but in the cold light of day, they would know it was the right thing.
I suppose that's where so many problems come for companies when they fire staff, that if it's not based on a performance-based metric, then you can always claim there was unfair dismissal, or there was, and I'm not saying
Absolutely.
there isn't unfair dismissal all the time, but there's always something you could look at, because as you said, it's an opinion. And I
Yes.
like that, what you've taught me, and I'm definitely going to take from this, is making sure that things are written down,
Yes.
because then it's just, and it's another part of the business, I suppose. It's business planning.
It is
Like you
business
would plan your
planning.
budget, you plan, okay, you cost X amount,
Yeah.
you're not bringing in X amount, or you're not achieving X agreed task.
Yes.
And then I really like that. What can I do? What can we do to help you? What can I do?
Yeah.
Because
Is
then
there
it's,
anything more I could be doing? Could I be better to help you on this goal? Because there will be times, hopefully, when they'll say, well, actually, yes, I could probably do with this or this. Fantastic. Well, let's provide that for you. Do you think that's what you need? And again, you don't take people on with a goal to fire them. Okay. People keep others in their company that are not good enough just longer than they need to do. We know what to do. Again, it's another Bergism. Decision making is easy. Acting on it is the problem.
yeah,
So eventually, for any of our listeners that are hearing this now that have parted company with people, you know, if you've parted company with them later than you should, you can probably look back and think, I should have done that a few months ago. And we kind of procrastinate, we kind of delay that because we still think we can turn them round. And maybe we can, but asking those questions early, is there anything more I could be helping you with? Do we agree this isn't hitting the tasks required or the sales figures? What do we need to be doing here? But as soon as you can say, is there anything more I could be doing to help you? If they say,
Mm.
no, 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 it's great, then they immediately are saying, no, if it's not working, it's me. And again, you're not having any satisfaction in that, but you can say, if you have to part company, look, each month we spoke, I've asked this question and you've kind of said, no, it's you. Um, where do we go from here? And if you can ask that in that, where do we go from here? They're not going to say, well, I'd like you to keep me on, please, even though I'm not earning money from you for you.
Yeah.
They'll just turn around and say, well, perhaps it's not working. And, if you say, perhaps it's not.